Okay, on to our next speaker, Kim Salmons, who is our Programme Director for the Foundation Year Studies in Humanities and Social Sciences. I had to read that because it's quite a mouthful, Kim. And I would just say, I don't know whether Mark is here as well. Yeah, Mark is over there. I know it's been said before on numerous occasions, but both Kim and Mark did a huge amount of work in a very short space of time, launching the With Foundation Year degree programmes, which, if I'm really honest, very much came to the rescue of the university over the summer and in the autumn, and their work in nurturing those programmes and the students, and, dare I say it, in encouraging them to apply to St Mary's to come and join us in the summer was very welcome. So a huge well done, Kim and Mark, for all that you've done there. So Kim tells me that something I didn't know, which was that she was a journalist on The Observer for 12 years. She's now book review editor for Joseph Conrad Today and does a lot of other work for the Joseph Conrad Centre, which I think will come over in your talk on A Taste of Literature. So, Kim Salmons, over to you.
I've got rather a bit of a sore throat, so bear with me. But fortunately, the microphone will save me, I think. Okay, so food. Where is food in literature? When I first started writing about food, specifically in Joseph Conrad and Thomas Hardy, I would receive puzzled scholarly looks. But there's no food in Conrad or Hardy. A little in Joyce, I suppose. But food is everywhere in literary texts, and authors too understand the importance of food in their works. Henry James, on reading Joseph Conrad, wrote, "To taste you as I taste you is really thus to wander away," suggesting that the experience of gaining knowledge through food is an empirical one. And how often have we described ourselves as consumers of literature, of savouring the final pages of a book, of being hungry for a good novel? But food, eating, and the sense of taste can, to some, appear incidental to a text. When we consider the references more closely, however, we realise that they challenge historical narratives and reveal sociological, sexual, political, and anthropological theories. For this lecture, I could have discussed loaves as flat as toads in Thomas Hardy's The Mayor of Casterbridge, or how Tess parted her lips and took in the strawberry that Alex forces upon her in Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I could have talked about fingering the last 2 inches of a chocolate eclair in Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. I could have discussed at some length the way that Leopold Bloom ate with relish the inner organs of beasts and fowls, and that's in James Joyce's Ulysses. However, what I have decided to do is to give you a snapshot of cannibalism in Shakespeare, Dickens, and Conrad as an example of how food can act as a lens through which we interrogate not just the text, but the world and ourselves. Let's look at Hamlet's reference to the funeral baked meats in his address to Horatio, in which he sarcastically suggests that the leftovers from his father's funeral are being served up at his mother's wedding. So close were the two events. Meat in Elizabethan times would come sealed in a coffin of pastry, and once that seal was broken, the meat would lose its freshness. The food served at the wedding would now be corrupted, serving as an analogy for the corrupted and rotting body of the dead king, which in turn reflects the corrupt nature of Denmark. As Marcellus, the guardsman, notes, "There's something rotten in the state of Denmark." But if the funeral baked meats act as an analogy for the king's body, the overriding insinuation is cannibalism. Moving into the 19th century, Charles Dickens uses food as social commentary. During the 1800s, During the 1800s, the population began its move from the countryside to the towns. Anxiety about who would produce the food that those in the cities would eat became top of the political agenda. Thomas Malthus had predicted that it would be soon impossible to feed a rapidly growing population. We're all familiar with the plea in Oliver Twist. "Please, sir, I want some more." Oliver epitomizes the fears of the 19th century. Not only is he a child, an unwanted new member of the human race, but he also wants more food. But think too about another coffin pie, the beautiful, round, compact pork pie that Pip stills for Magwitch in Great Expectations. That treat for Christmas Day becomes associated with crime and fear, while the issues that Dickens deals with in the novel, the consuming of the poor by the rich, is expressed in the cannibalistic overtones articulated by Magwitch on that foggy Kent marsh. "Your liver shall be torn out, roasted and ate," Magwitch threatens Pip as he consumes the pork pie. He was already handing mincemeat down in his throat in a most curious manner. Magwitch's hunger renders him isolated from the luxury of discerning taste, but the manner in which he eats reduces him to an animalistic state. As Dickens socializes food as such, linking it to crime and class, he's insinuating that the poor are a little more than uncivilized savages. The use of food to distinguish between the civilized and the savage is most notably employed by Joseph Conrad, not least in his short story Falk, in which the protagonist of the same name is forced to eat a fellow shipmate when stranded at sea. Conrad's tale highlights the numerous occasions of shipwreck that occurred during the 19th century, forcing men and women to eat each other out of desperation. The steamships of the late 19th century and early 20th centuries were the container ships of the 21st. They exported and imported food to and from the colonies of the British Empire, that great bastion of civilization. But many ships were overloaded or ill-maintained, with owners willing to sacrifice the crew in order to receive the insurance payout. Falk addresses perceived notions of morality and the codes of conduct on which the British Empire was supposedly built. The idea that white Europeans abandoned those codes to fulfill the base instinct of hunger was unthinkable. Hence, the custom of the sea, in which the short straws were drawn and unlucky people, coincidentally usually the cabin boy or the foreigner, was sacrificed and eaten so the others could live. But the practice of cannibalism at sea dispelled the myth that it was only savages from dark continents who ate each other. Europeans would never lose restraint and engage in what Dickens referred to as the last resort. Conrad's short story Falk forces the reader to confront their humanity, to consider their own notions of civilization and their powers of restraint when isolated from societal codes of conduct. To conclude then, food is not just about what we put in our mouths, but also the way that we cook, the utensils we use, the manner in which we eat. Food situates our culture, our religion, and historically our gender. So if this lecture has whetted your appetite, you can find more reading on the subject here. Thank you.